David Klein joins us from Homeland on our 2020 Emmy Contenders cinematography panel today. David, it was the final season of Homeland. What's that last moment on set like for you?
Well, it was glorious because we'd come back to LA by then. We actually spent, I started at Homeland in season 3, and every season was like starting a new show. It was I did a season in Charlotte, and then a season in Cape Town, a season in Berlin, New York, Richmond, Virginia, and then this final season was in Morocco, and a couple months in LA. So it was a whirlwind, and as much as I love that show, it was kind of, I'll be honest, it was good to be done. It was just such a hard show, traveling the world and creating a new world every season. I owe that show a lot, but it was time, I think.
Both of happiness, sadness, and relief, I'm sure, of all three.
100%.
Tell us about shooting in Morocco. What challenges did that bring for you?
There's a lot of filming in Morocco, but most of it's in Ouarzazate, where the studios are. And we were in Casablanca. And I think the hardest thing was that we were the first TV show to attempt spending that much time in Casablanca. So we had to import a massive amount of crew and equipment. We had to build our own stages, out of an old convention center. So I'd say top to bottom, it was the reinvention of the wheel that made it difficult there. And, we a lot of our crew came from Ouarzazate, even importing from different parts of the country.
The episode you've chosen for the Emmy judges to look at from your branch is Designated Driver, not the finale. What appealed to you about submitting that one?
It's Chris, it's all creative. It's all about the 6-minute segment that I have to cut for the Emmys. I find it very hard to find 6 continuous minutes of my work that I'm really happy with. But there was a great sequence in that episode that takes place. We shot it just outside of Casablanca, and it takes place, it's a prisoner exchange on the Afghan-Pakistani border, where there's also a terrorist attack at the same time. So it was a really dynamic scene, and it had a lot of action to it. It had a lot of camera movement, and it was a day exterior scene, which I usually don't gravitate to, but I was really happy with the way it turned out.
What about a scene like that has so much chaos, seeming chaos to the viewer, but not necessarily chaos to you, appeals to you when you're working?
Oh, we had plenty of chaos, trust me. Also, one thing that Homeland
planned chaos.
Correct. One thing that Homeland has been for me is a television show about shooting in cars, and we had a lot of cars in that sequence. So I wanted to say goodbye to the show, the way I'd been shooting it for so long. It has to do with telling the story. Like Marshall was saying earlier, it's all about the story. And when it all comes together, and the camera work, the lighting, the sound, the production design, everything, when it all kind of fits together and works, you just know it, and it creates an excellent sequence.
There's a scene in the finale with Claire Danes bathed in light at the very end. What did that mean for you, and how did you shoot that one?
There's, at the end of the show, we're telling 2 different stories. We're telling the story of Claire's character, Carrie Mathison. We're also telling the story of Mandy Patinkin's character, Saul, and how they have, I hope you guys, I'm going to spoil it, but how they've kind of separated, and even though they're not together at the end, they do come together at the end. And so I was doing something, when we were pushing in on Mandy, he was finding something from, Saul is finding something from Carrie, and we're pushing in on him, and we go into this flare, and I was trying to tie them together with these 2 flares. And the one that was, just a big HMI coming through the window behind Mandy. And we had Claire's scene was shot at the Los Angeles Theater downtown. And so we had all these moving lights set up. And so as we pushed into her, I used one of the movers just to come in and kind of blow us out and create a cool flare. So that's, for me, visually, what was tying them together.
In all the episodes you shot for Homeland, was there a particular moment, even when you're there on set, you're thinking, wow, this is as good as we can do? Something come to mind?
Well, a lot of it. And, I'll go back to traveling the world with this show. There were some scenes that we shot in Cape Town, they seemed so big they were almost unreal. It almost didn't look real. Like John was saying about the people are going to think this is a green screen downtown LA, but we had some setups that were just incredible. From the production design to the background to the camera work just kind of fit in nicely. But then also, the next season we're in Berlin, and Berlin was the first time we were shooting a city as itself. Cape Town was supposed to be Islamabad and Kabul, and, Charlotte was supposed to be DC. So Berlin was the first time that we could get super wide, because, there are always limitations when you're shooting a city for another city. But if you're shooting a city for itself, it's kind of fair game. So that was the first time we really, kind of got to relax and just show the entire place.
A character I wanted to ask you about that I'm very impressed with how you all pulled it off. Beau Bridges' character, who was the vice president and then becomes the president. We don't really see him all that much. And yet when like you said earlier, I guess spoilers at this point, since it's been a few months, he's killed off in the off-screen helicopter crash. How did you all get the audience to feeling strongly about him without actually seeing him all that much?
I give a lot of that credit to Beau. He's a great guy. He's a sweetheart, and it just comes across. People tend to care about that guy, and that was some of the more tricky stuff that we were doing in the final season, because the White House set was in Morocco on stage, and almost everything we shot this season was in Morocco, except for the mountains. And so we shot all the interiors of those episodes months and months before we came to LA and shot the actual aftermath of the crash and the shootout and all that stuff. So it's really hard to kind of keep everything together sometimes when you shoot. You're basically cutting back and forth to something you shot months and months ago. So it's all about having a good plan.
I had two cast members, and I think which two I wanted to ask you about in terms of your working relationship with them. And one is as good an actress really is working today in the whole industry, and that's Claire Danes.
She's spectacular. She's a hell of an actress and just one of the greatest people to work with. She is a total pro. She's a total pro. And the first time I started working with Claire, she and I sat down, and I was taking over in season 3 for Nelson Craig, who'd shot the first 2 seasons. And I asked her if there was, a particular thing that she knew about herself in lighting, if there's a type of lighting she liked, or there's a specific way she liked working with a cinematographer. And she just said to me, she said, "Dave, I don't know how you guys do what you do, but I appreciate it when you're good at it. You can light me however you want." She's been my favorite ever since. She's great.
And we were talking about Nathan Lane in the previous segment, but Mandy Patinkin kind of fits that bill too. Somebody that's been working for decades, comes from the theater, which I think trains so many good actors. What was your relationship like with him?
It was pretty great. Mandy's he's a big personality, and when he walks in a room, he kind of takes over a space. So I think my favorite days working with him were when he had big scenes with Claire, because the two of them together are monumental. He comes in and fills a room that she's already filled, and just watching them go back and forth is pretty spectacular.
You've had 3 Emmy nominations. What has that meant to you, getting that recognition from your own peers in your branch?
It's incredible. It's incredible, man. It's in some ways very humbling to be put in a group of cinematographers that you get put into, the other nominees. And it's nerve-wracking, and it's just a spectacular experience.